Hey, and welcome to the healthcare.ai machine learning hands-on broadcast. I'm your host, Mike Mastanduno, joined by Mike Levy and Rick Wolf of Insight Data Science.
Hi, nice to be here.
I've been looking forward to this show for a pretty long time. Rick's been a friend of mine for about a year, and I'm really excited to do this broadcast, learn about Insight Health, and talk about that. So before we get going, we've just got a few of the typical housekeeping items. You're probably watching on YouTube. We'd love to hear your contributions, your questions. We'll do our best to get to them. You can leave feedback in the chat or ask questions for Mike, or Rick. You can subscribe to our channel to get updates on when we're going to go live, which is, I guess it's been every week up until today. We missed last week, but we've decided to kind of scale back the content just a little bit and keep the interviews really high quality. So those notifications will be more important. So subscribe to the channel, and then we'd also love to see you in person at our Healthcare Analytics Summit 2017 here in Salt Lake City. The Grand America is going to host us. We have a 2-day workshop on machine learning taught by yours truly. And we also have 2 days, or is it 3? No,
I think it's 2.
2 days of machine learning and all healthcare analytics with some really great speakers. So if you're looking for a chance to come out to Salt Lake in the next month or so, that's early September, September 13th and 14th, I believe, is the conference, and the 11th and 12th are the workshops. We'd love to see you out there. You can get more information on the Health Catalyst website or on the healthcare.ai Slack channel. And speaking of the Slack channel, we had some amazing contributions from users this week. A couple of great data sets provided by people who are on this Healthcare AI Slack channel. One of them is a melanoma data set that's hosted on GitHub, and he linked it for us. A lot of chatter about that data set. And then there's another one on lung cancer. So some really cool imaging data sets that are available on Kaggle and GitHub for you to look at and join the conversation on that Slack channel. And we can get that. Sounds like Rick might have some sirens in San Francisco.
Sorry, I could.
No, that's fine. that's funny. So Rick's calling in from San Francisco, which turns out is a bigger city than Salt Lake. But anyways, let's do some in the news and then get right to the main event, which is talking about Insight Health. Mike?
Yeah, so one article that I saw this week that I wanted to bring attention to was on xeconomy.com about 2 Kaggle competitions detecting lung cancer and breast cancer, respectively, from medical images. Over $1 million in prizes available between these 2 competitions. And one thing that I thought was notable here, Mike, is that false positive rates for lung scans with radiologists, with human doctors, is over 90%.
That's very high.
It's a lot of false positives.
But I guess the cost of missing a nodule is also pretty high.
Right.
So
important to calibrate that loss function.
yeah.
But the potential for benefit from machine learning here is huge. And one of the novel things about this competition was integrating metadata about the images, so patient records and patient demographics with the medical images, and also time series of images, so we can look at how things develop over time, which is kind of an early stage in AI, but a lot of potential there, I think.
Definitely. And so this is the lung cancer competition, yeah?
Well, there was a lung cancer and a breast cancer.
Okay. And one of them was evaluated on criteria other than just best accuracy, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was the one that you sent me earlier this week, right?
So it had a bunch of different criteria of like how judges were going to assess how you served up the information you found to the clinicians, how impactful it was. It was really a step in the practical direction, which I think is something we haven't seen yet with AI in healthcare. So that was really cool to see, $100,000 prize pool and, those kind of directions.
Yeah, the criteria aren't just reducing the error by that last 0.1%, but kind of how usable can we make this information.
Yeah. So that's really neat. I guess the links will be available after the show or on the Slack channel. So if you want to, we'll do we'll cut that short so we get a lot of time for the interview. But feel free to get on the Slack channel, and there's quite a bit of chatter about it. I haven't been able to keep up with it, but I'd encourage you all to. So we have Rick Wolf from Insight Data Science, and I'm going to have to remember not to look at him right here on my screen and keep looking up at you all, but that's hard, because Rick is just such a handsome and charming guy. Maybe with that introduction, Rick, could you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you do?
Sure. Yeah, but it sounds like I'd prefer to have you.
Great.
So I'm Rick Wolf. I'm a program director and data scientist at Insight Data Science, and I'm specifically the program director of our San Francisco-based health data science program.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'll tell you a little bit more about me before jumping into Insight. So I have a PhD in neuroscience from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And so that was a kind of psychiatry focused with my research. So I was studying how the brain recognizes facial expressions and with that, what that kind of means for mental health, and mostly using eye tracking and a mixture of kind of MRI, different MRI techniques. So a lot of medical imaging, and kind of loved the data analysis part of everything, and wound up getting what they called like a graduate minor in computer science for machine learning along the way. And so that led me to, want to pursue a career in data science itself. And then, in doing that, wanted to, make the positive impact that I think we all, everybody that cares about health does, right? And so health is a great place to do that. Mm-hmm. So a little bit, I can talk a little bit more about Insight. So I actually, all three of us actually went through the Insight Fellows program, which is, so it's a 7-week program geared towards helping you transition from academia into a career in data science. So during those 7 weeks, what you work on is for 4 weeks, you work on a project that is a kind of a portfolio piece, a showcasing of your skills as a data scientist. Mm-hmm. And I choose my words carefully there, that you are already a data scientist. So we accept people that are doing data science in their academic careers, or like very ready for careers in data science, and look to help people close that gap. And one way that we do that is, it's a competitive job atmosphere out there right now. And so one thing that we do a lot of is just facilitate introductions to companies that are currently hiring, and know that Insight Fellows learn a lot and are very ready to hit the ground running on data science teams.
Yeah, that Insight network is invaluable.
Yes, right. So so we have at this point over 1,000 alumni across our different locations. So we have offices in, we started in Palo Alto, grew to New York, then to Boston, then to San Francisco. And we just a few weeks ago launched a Seattle office as well. And then we have health data science, more generally, artificial intelligence and data engineering as programs that for kind of job specialization tracks.
So that's a lot of fellows coming out. And so I guess, how did you end up, you wanted a career in data science, and you've kind of ended up teaching data science, right? Or maybe facilitating others to teach themselves data science,
Sure.
however you want to put that. But so you ended up in health because you wanted to be, doing some good. And I guess, what makes a good health data scientist in your opinion?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that we look for in our admissions process at Insight that is very deliberately just mapping to what we know companies are looking for. Mm-hmm. So to me, a very big big thing is messy data experience, and this is especially true within healthcare. So you're generally working in healthcare. You're generally working with data that wasn't collected with you or your analysis in mind. It's oftentimes with like something like billing in mind, right? And so being able to take something and turn it into a data warehouse or database is an important skill. Definitely stats and machine learning are critical skills of a healthcare data scientist. There are people out there doing some absolute ML wizardry right now. It's kind of a really exciting time, and to be impactful, you have to be excited to stay on top of that stuff too.
Yeah.
So I would say I think there's a lot of resources that rehash this list, but like I would say computer science, and you'll notice that I didn't say hacking, which is kind of how people commonly put it with the data scientist. I think the coding bar in healthcare is very high. You're working on important products that affect lives, and people want to know that a data scientist is using coding best practices. And then the last thing is communication. Data scientists always are working with, the job of the data scientist is to be representing technical components, but working with a team, right? So communicating with non-technical stakeholders is critical for a data scientist.
So I have a follow-up question, but then Mike, jump in anytime with your own questions. So do you find that a specific graduate degree is typically better than another, or that MDs are typically better than PhDs, or anything like that?
Actually, just let me tag on an additional part to that question. I know Insight in general takes folks with PhDs, and Insight Health accepts MDs as well. Why keep that bar at PhDs? What is the skill set that PhDs bring that folks without the doctorate don't have?
So both of these are really good questions. So I'm gonna address Mike Levy's first, and then I'll talk about the kind of field of study. So right now, the reason that Insight sets the bar at PhD is, so first of all, I'll get out in front and say that we actually are open to considering people without PhDs, and we do. The reason that we advertise PhD required is that, at least to my knowledge, to date, we've only accepted individuals with PhDs. And I think the reason for that is there's a significant amount of just kind of data intuition and learning how to ask questions that comes from the just current design of how one does a PhD that is certainly available to people that are getting masters, but masters tend to be focused a little bit more on classwork and that sort of thing, and the research experience is what we've seen is a critical component of succeeding in Insight, because as you guys are very well aware, is it's a very self-directed, we provide kind of an infrastructure to help people flourish in whatever way they want. And so it's an extremely self-directed environment.
And that's kind of how data science careers are too, right?
Exactly.
You can't be going to your manager every 5 minutes looking for help, or even every day looking for help.
Right. Does that answer your question a bit, Mike?
Yeah. Thanks.
So then, with respect to kind of backgrounds, I've actually kind of looked at our admissions data to see, and there is, within our health data science program, there is definitely a bias towards the life sciences, but that's just sheerly because I think people that are interested in life sciences look at our set of programs and say, oh, health data science, that's for me. I've actually not seen any particular background be particularly critical. Certainly, genomics companies and bioinformatics companies are more likely to look for people that have that type of experience. But beyond that, even the companies that we work with tend to be extremely open to a variety of backgrounds. I've had companies that have a genomics product request to like meet physicists and that sort of thing, because they just want to bring diversity to their team, and diversity of thought. So
I guess, yeah, it's interesting that people, in healthcare are looking for that kind of similar diversity on teams.
Right. Yeah.
Can you talk about like what's the scope of companies that Insight Health works with? Do you work with hospitals in addition to private companies, or is it kind of smattering of both?
Yeah. So our health data science program is located in Boston. So it launched in Boston in late 2015. And then about a year later, it launched in San Francisco in late 2016. And so the types of companies that the two locations work with are a bit different because of the types of companies that settled in Silicon Valley versus in Boston. So our Boston program tends to work with more hospitals, for example, and like Merck's, and like bigger kind of like research institutes. Whereas our Silicon Valley program tends to work. Of course, it's the Bay Area. It's more startup focused. But in terms of what the company's working on, for us to work with them in the health data science program, it's really, really diverse. So everything from kind of genomics, like I've mentioned, to more like digital health type apps, behavior change, wearables. So we work with like Fitbit, for example, and to health insurance, and just kind of broader healthcare industry.
Okay. And then what about hospitals? Clinical data science teams are starting to crop up, especially at academic hospitals.
Right. Yeah. So we've particularly in the past, we've had a collaboration here with UCSF on. So I mentioned before that fellows work on projects during the session for 4 weeks, and some of those projects are proposed by teams outside of Insight that are looking for somebody to kind of breathe fresh life into a data set for them. So we have had a partnership with UCSF working on some data for them in the past. At this point, for our Silicon Valley program, we don't have hospitals. Our Boston program does work with some hospitals. It's super exciting to see it kind of branch out of like a purely private kind of sector. I think everybody can benefit from it. So,
yeah, I guess it's funny that you say you think everybody can benefit. That's kind of what our bread and butter around here is. We have an open source software package called healthcare.ai that sponsors this broadcast, and the idea of that package is to make it easier for data architects or data analysts to use machine learning, by kind of sweeping those hyperparameters or train test split kind of subtleties under the hood and say, the default value is probably good enough, and if they can clean the data set well and organize it well, they can probably build a model that works better than what they have now in production. So that's been really cool to work with. I want to get your take before we run out of time. I definitely want to hear your opinion on what are the hot topics in healthcare right now that machine learning is addressing, and like which ones are the ones that are going to be making impact in the next couple years?
Yeah. So I thought a little bit about this because I get
it's a hard question.
Asked a decent amount. So I mean, the health field is challenging for data science because it is giant and very dependent on its current infrastructure. I don't think we're going to see an Uber of healthcare, right? That comes in and is just like, we're going to do away with taxis now because this version's better. I think there's room for tons of innovation in healthcare, but it happens slower, and for good reason, right? We don't want sweeping, untested change in life-saving technology. So I think where a lot of impact is going to happen, kind of in the near future, is in things that supplement the care provider's workflow. And so in terms of what that means, it could be like serving relevant information to a care provider at the right time. So like I mentioned before, these electronic medical records, and thinking about like ICD-10 codes, for example, that data is not collected with the data scientist in mind. That honestly, that data is not really even collected with the doctor in mind sometimes, and so where data science can make a giant impact here is to work with that information and present it to the care provider in a way that helps impact their workflow, rather than we hear these studies coming out of care providers sitting at their computer entering data and not even looking at their patient throughout a clinical visit. And so I think of like a company like Medisas that's working with electronic medical records and doing a lot about presentation there. And another version that might take is applying diagnostic models to supplement the information provided to a care provider. So I think like a company like Arteris is doing deep learning on cardiac images right now, and they actually earlier this year kind of notably got FDA approval of their algorithm, which was a giant challenge because they had to demonstrate that it was reliably better than a human scorer. Then another critical thing is just the way the CMS is structured right now. Everything is targeted around readmissions, and readmissions are incentivized for hospitals, but reducing readmissions is incentivized for hospitals, of course. But so my understanding is top models only predict that with about 60% accuracy right now. And there's a lot of room and a lot of incentive to greatly improve that. Those are some of the ones that I think are low-hanging fruit is the wrong word, like high priority to kind of make an impact.
And Rick, how much do you think the bottleneck to putting those kinds of systems in production is in the engineering and architecture phase versus the algorithm development versus the like proving and regulatory approval?
Sure. Yeah. I think it varies. So in terms of like providing information to care providers, like working with electronic medical records, I would imagine that is more of an engineering as well as a bit of a modeling challenge, because you're going to be building something on top of like probably the biggest EMR company in the US is Epic, and you're probably going to be building something on top of their software rather than getting a hospital to whole cloth change over to your system. In terms of the diagnostic modeling, it's certainly hard to predict that stuff. I think with current advances in deep learning, we're actually on the cusp of getting models that are going to do a real good job. And so I think a lot of companies kind of focusing on that are going to be bottlenecked by kind of FDA regulation, and I want to be careful and say that I think that they should be, like I don't want a doctor making a decision based on just a model pretty much ever. They went to school and they know a lot about how the body works. So
yeah, I guess algorithms, in that sense, algorithms aren't going to ever replace clinicians, but there's a lot of room for them to work together.
Right. Yeah. So one interesting challenge I do see is, and again, where the communication of skills of a data scientist come in is training MDs that maybe don't have as quantitative of a background in interpreting these models and not taking them as just a as the gospel of like the model has predicted, and so it must be true.
Do you have any best hits, best practices for doing that?
I think it starts not even with training, but with information presentation. Taking care to present information. You think of when you're trying to present information maybe to your company, or like when I've done an analysis and I obviously have a recommendation from it and want the company to do something with it. I present that in a way that supports my claim and is basically meant to influence people's thinking. And I think in providing information to a care provider, we should carefully not do that and attempt to supplement the information, not influence an opinion.
It's kind of like just like organizing all the data and then presenting it in a way that supplements their decision-making process.
Right. Yeah. Just enhancing the workflow, not taking over the workflow.
Right. Yeah, it's really insightful. What do you think about random forest? We've talked a lot about deep learning. We gave 4 examples of deep learning competitions. Like, does random forest have a place in healthcare?
Yes, it does. It's funny. When I do machine learning interviews, one of my go-to questions is just tell me everything you know about random forest, because it's so commonly used and so commonly not understood. There's a lot of room for different algorithms to logistic regression. Always going to be important because there will always be data that it does just fine on. And especially when you think about the trade-offs in training set size for neural networks in general, let alone kind of deep learning architectures. Our traditional machine learning models will always have a place, I think.
Yeah, that's a really important point. That deep learning is never going to be a tool for all situations. It requires a lot of data.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I could probably go on all day.
Yeah, right.
Maybe I'll leave it with one last kind of gut-wrenching question, which is to say, do you think Python or R is more suited to healthcare?
Oh, no.
Because we've got some very strong opinions on our team, so I want to get an outside expert's opinion.
I have the diplomatic answer, but so the diplomatic answer is or SAS. Yeah. So I think Python in terms of just from an engineering perspective is always going to win out, particularly with some of the machine learning packages, and obviously scikit-learn has a giant user base now. With that said, I now personally have switched over to exclusively using Python. I was exclusively R in grad school, and I have to say I miss R when it comes to doing inferential statistics. It's unparalleled. Everything about those modeling packages is incredible, and I don't think Python's going to beat it anytime soon.
All right, so maybe we're in a stalemate still.
Yeah.
We'll see where that goes to. Mike, do you have any last questions before we say thanks and so long?
No, this has been great. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation, Rick. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This was really, really fun. I'm real excited about everything healthcare.ai is doing. So they're really awesome.
Yeah, and shout out to Insight. Thanks for the great education.
Yeah.
And the great network,
Yeah.
It's all great. So,
Thanks. Well, hey, maybe could I just briefly plug, so Insight is taking admissions or applications for our upcoming session that would begin in mid-January.
Mid-January, okay.
Yeah, so insightdatascience.com if you want to check it out.
Yep.
It works. Yeah. It's a great program.
Yep, can't recommend it enough. You'll meet great people like Rick and get great jobs at great companies doing whatever you want, really. But healthcare is especially awesome. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you all next week.
If not, the week after.
I think we have a next week scheduled. It's an interview with a data scientist at a hospital, but I can't remember. Look it up on the YouTube channel, and you'll get the description. So thanks for watching.
Thank you for joining us today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, comment below, and click the links below to join our Slack channel and our Healthcare AI community.